The 12th straight title fight for the Bantamweight champ. It's Amanda Nunes coming up this weekend in the main event. Nunes and Aldana, and ultimately a new fresh face as a title challenger. Some people out there on the interwebs saying that this could be Nunes' toughest fight to date as a champ. I disagree slightly, but when you do look at this one, Matt, for Amanda Nunes, it was originally supposed to be a third fight against Juliana Pena. Her last time out, 50-45, 50-44, 50-43 the scorecard. She had 3 knockdowns in the second round of that matchup and left no doubts, but they were going to try and match it up a third time. So realistically, Aldana was supposed to fight Raquel Pennington last month. They dissolved that fight. Pennington ranked 2nd on a 5-fight win streak, serves as the backup. Aldana ranked 5th, coming in on a 2-fight win streak, gets the fight. And for Aldana, last time out, a lot of adversity against Macy Chiasson. She lands a liver shot up kick that knocks out Chiasson. And now she gets the title shot. And all of a sudden, Lobo Gym, a hotbed of MMA, you have champion Alexa Grasso, UFC flyweight Alessandro Costa, who's going to be fighting the weekend after this fight, as well as Diego Lopez, who came in on short notice and looked great against Movsar Evloev. Things are really going well for those fighters down in Mexico. And ultimately, in this matchup, Aldana finally gets that title shot that we all thought she was going to get when she beat Phenomenal Ketlin Vieira a few years ago.
And I'm pretty darn excited about this matchup, if I do say so, because for Amanda Nunes, it's been interesting just to kind of figure out which point in her career she's at right now, because the first Juliana Pena fight was not a good one for her whatsoever. Like, she really did wilt under the pressure of Pena, and she didn't look ready for the adversity that she ended up facing in that fight. Now, to her credit, she was able to go back, rebuild as a fighter, and she put on a great performance her last time out against Pena. But the big difference between Juliana Pena and Irene Aldana is Aldana's pretty comfortable striking backwards. She's someone who can land power shots, even when she is evading your punches. Whereas Pena, we saw it, it really became a meme afterwards. Charged forward, just throwing reckless strikes. And I understand she did have some success doing that in the first fight. But again, that's kind of a Hail Mary technique to try to win a fight. And I don't think Aldana is going to leave those openings in her own striking game. That Juliana Pena ended up doing in her last fight. But the thing that I will say about Aldana, and why I like this matchup so much, is when you have these big underdogs, not that she's a massive one like we've seen in some of these fights, but when you have decent sized underdogs in title fights, you have to figure out, okay, where can they have success, right? Like, some opponents, let's just be honest, you struggle to find any single range where they can have success. But for Aldana, I think she can look at some of Amanda Nunes' separate fights and sort of draw different positives. Go back to the Germaine de Randamie fight, not the first one. The first one was very bad for Germaine de Randamie, but their rematch was a much more competitive fight than I think people believe, or at least people remember it as, because yes, Amanda Nunes had a lot of top control, had a lot of great wrestling in that fight, but Germaine had great success on the feet and was able to land quite a bit.
That's why I don't think Irene Aldana is the toughest title fight test that Amanda Nunes has had. She's fought Miesha Tate, who was at the top of her powers, peak of her powers. She fought Ronda Rousey, who wasn't at the peak of her powers. She then went on to fight like Germaine de Randamie, as was said. Like, Nunes has fought some complete fighters and some specialists that have offered up some different things than Aldana.
I would say Aldana is much younger in her career, I guess, than Germaine de Randamie was at that time. And for de Randamie and Aldana, they both have that same hole, and that's why I bring up that fight. If Aldana loses this fight, she's probably going to get out-wrestled convincingly, because Nunes, it's weird. A lot of people do like to bring up her boxing, and it's great. Her power punching is absurd for this weight class. Probably the best knockout artist we have ever seen. Go back and watch the Chris Cyborg fight.
That was the other name I was going to bring up.
But for Nunes, again, we have seen her struggle against some of these more long-range strikers. I'll be curious, though, to see if Nunes kicks, because against Holly Holm, she actually used her own kicks to the leg, and it ended up being the head kick that finished the fight, and it helped her quite a bit maintain that range in the matchup. I'll be curious if she wants to have that same kind of a game plan, because I think at long distance, Aldana can have great success with her own hands, and even if she throws her kicks in there, I just think for Nunes, if she gets that top position, the ground and pound and the submission threat is something that I don't know Irene Aldana can overcome.
It's really weird because the UFC, they're notorious for this. It's not even the UFC. It's the president of the UFC, Dana White. Doesn't like catchweight fights. And for Irene Aldana, you wonder why I have an asterisk next to her graphic. 137.5 pounds. She had a 140-pound catchweight against Macy Chiasson her last time out. And in the first round, Darren Bronstetter on screen had it a 10-8 for Irene Aldana. It was a tricky takedown attempt from Chiasson. They kind of were 50-50 on the feet. And all of a sudden, Aldana ends up in a position with a crazy armbar. Then it gets back up. Then it's in an armbar again. And then at the end of the round, it's hammer fists, it's elbows, it's everything from Aldana. Flip the script in the second round. Chasson goes out there with the wrestling shoes on really early on in the first minute, gets the takedowns, gets caught in some precarious positions, but it's all Chasson in the second round. In the third round, little bit of striking initially. Chasson takedown. Aldana gets back, or sorry, Chasson gets up to stack. And then she gets hit with that liver shot. Something that I don't know if we've ever seen before. Like, it was wild to see that up kick. But Aldana struggled in those ranges. But we've seen Aldana in the fight that she had against Yana, at that time Kunitskaya, but now it's Santos. In that one, bloodies her up early, circling away with her hands up. That's a hallmark of Aldana. Circling away every time to her right, circles away, gets back into range, and then just strikes some more and strikes some more.
And that's the one thing that I think Aldana can have a ton of success with. If Amanda Nunes gets frustrated, which we have seen before, if she doesn't have a lot of success with her boxing, if she does find herself whiffing, she will start to overcommit. And Irene Aldana is someone who has legit punching power moving backwards. Go back and watch that Ketlin Vieira knockout. That was insane, the way that she was able to land that strike. And I'm not saying she's going to knock out Amanda Nunes. That is a wild prediction to have. But if Amanda finds herself throwing a lot of those kind of looping shots, I could see where Aldana can at least clip her, hurt her, and get her respect on the feet.
And you talk about a fight against Holly Holm. For Irene Aldana, that is her last loss. That was a big fight, and it was a main event as well, and she lost it convincingly, but then after the fight said, I broke my foot shortly before it, and that was kind of the reason for some of her struggles. So I look at that fight with a little bit of a grain of salt. Aldana struggled getting backed up in that one.
As Holly Holm's pretty good at holding people against the cage nowadays.
Some would call her crafty. So for this fight, again, it's going to come down to a lot of those combinations from Aldana. She does do good work to the body, which can slow down her opponents as well. She does great work in the clinch. She does really good with her uppercuts. And when she's at space and she can set pace, that's when Aldana has a lot of success. But my big key or big question mark for Aldana is the switch on or is the switch off? Because there's moments, long moments, when she's at distance where nothing happens and she's content with just holding those hands there and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then looking to kind of start her offense and counter off of some of what her opponents throw at her, which can cause her issues, especially against somebody like Nunes with the takedowns and with the boxing combinations that she possesses of her own. So Matt, when you look at the matchup, again, I understand why Pennington's not getting the title shot because of how UFC 224
I'm way more excited for this fight than I would have been that.
But it's kind of unfortunate that number 2 on a longer win streak doesn't get it. Nunes is a perennial favorite in her matchup. She is in this one. We threw it on over to you guys. YouTube community tab. 67% right now going with Nunes to get the win in the matchup. Out of some of the comment sections, Jonathan saying Aldana was losing to Chasson before the liver kick. I'd be very surprised if Nunes doesn't get a first round submission. Diego Lopez has something to say about that one, Jonathan. Darion saying Nunes by submission. Aldana was struggling with the grappling of Chasson. Would be surprised if Nunes doesn't exploit that. And then we'll go with Gabriel, who's saying Aldana gets it done with the hands. Nunes will try to brawl and get caught in the crisp boxing of Irene Aldana. Matt, the ultimate, the pick in this one. Who do you have?
I really wanted to pick the underdog going into this video, and I thought I was going to, because I think Irene Aldana is going to win a lot of the moments on the feet in this fight. I truly do. I know Amanda Nunes is an all-time striker. I just think her ability, or I guess inability, to throw the jab sometimes to set up the power shot and just go for the power shot could get her caught if she does find herself leaning against a fighter like Aldana. But I guess I've convinced myself that Amanda Nunes' wrestling is going to be able to win her out in some of these rounds. If Aldana's not able to go out there and get a finish, I don't know what she looks like in the 4th and 5th round against somebody who's going to try to take her down, who's going to throw those power punches. And the thing about Nunes is, that was the conversation a lot earlier on in her career, was, hey, she has all the skills, but the cardio is somewhat lacking. That's been the part of her game that I would say she's improved the most on ever since she has become champion. And that really is the thing that helped her become champion in the first place. So I guess I have Amanda Nunes, but I look at this fight so much closer than the odds makers have.
People are going to look at Aldana's fight against Chasson, just numbers on a page, and say, okay, well, in the second round, there were takedowns for Macy, and, well, she won that fight convincingly. But if you go back and watch it, Aldana actually uses a leg lock sweep to get out of a bad position at the start of the round. In the first round, she's able to go out there, get those armbar attempts that a lot of people would have tapped to. Aldana's come a long way with her ground game since she came into the UFC years ago. The craziest part about it is, Aldana's the older fighter in the matchup.
Yeah, but you gotta judge fighters by the amount of hard fights they've had, and Amanda Nunes has been a lot of them.
It's wild. I will go with Nunes because, again, I think the kicks are going to be a big difference maker in this fight. You look at just the limited glimpses of the training with Roger Kral, who's a great striking coach out of ATT Sunrise, helping out at Lioness Studio, and you see a lot of kicks out there, but we have seen that a hallmark of Nunes' game to mix in with her boxing, like the fight against Holly Holmes. So,
and if I just may, I wonder if 135 is getting hard for Nunes to make, because that was a really difficult weight cut for her earlier on in her career, and I know it hasn't been a big conversation as of late, but still, at 35, it's not something that gets easier the older you get, so I'm just curious if it is a factor for her.
That fight against Norma Dumont, that's coming up at featherweight. Can't wait for it. But Matt, both of us in the matchup going with the Lioness, Amanda Nunes, to retain the title. Some big-time fights left on this card that you really want to look out for, and you can see it from the thumbnail. I mean, all the Canadians and one adopted Canadian and Diana Belbita in that thumbnail with the mountains of BC in the background. Awesome to have the fight leader back in Canada.
Will Elias Pettersson be in attendance? Will he be like Tim Duncan?
He's back in Europe for this one, I'm sure. I bet you maybe Trevor Linden's there. Maybe get some of the OGs.
Horvat's not there anymore.
Nah, he's in the island. But yeah, you could get some big-time hockey players. I'm sure Jeff is going to get some shine, the brother of Mike Malott. He plays for the Manitoba Moose, but a lot to look forward to. Matt, in the intro, we drank the maple syrup. You can see it right there. That was a trip, so definitely something for this card. But make sure you let us know who you have, as always, in the comments section. Question mark kicks 2 hours before the prelims here on the channel. And one thing to note, Chris Stock was supposed to make his light heavyweight debut against Khalil Roundtree. That fight is off, but it looks like Roundtree's gonna get a short notice opponent. It's just a matter of who. So if any of these fights flip out or change out, like we had last weekend with Naimov, Jamie Mullarkey, what a knockout win for Naimov, and Jim Miller, Jesse Butler, you know that you can count on us to get those short notice videos up in time. So keep it locked in with the channel, keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.